Welcome to the Laser Channel. I'm your host Greg, and in this episode I'm going to be making this template with 2 mini alignment crosshairs to reuse this template in future use. I'll show you how to make this template and how to align it to your workspace in your laser machine. Stay tuned to find out how. For this project, to make this template, I'll need the following materials. Starting out with the obvious and basic one is a piece of cardboard or plywood. I prefer to use cardboard because I'm not sure how many times I'll need to use this template in the future. Plus, construction materials are at an all-time high versus cardboard is very cheap and easy to obtain. The next thing that I'll need is something to secure this cardboard in the work area. And for that, I like to use these magnetic strips or some masking tape. And there's also these T-pins that are available on most forums for free for you to resize and use with your honeycomb bed. And 2 last items will be some type of measuring device if you're working on your own template. For mine, I'm making templates for these wooden cutoffs from a tree branch that are being used as finisher metals for a local event. I have those sized to fit through here, but your project material might be sized slightly different. And the last thing that I'll need is the pair of safety glasses to go with this project. The machine and tooling that I'm using is the Xtool D1 10-watt laser machine. This is the non-pro machine, so it does not have limit switches, but with the software updates for the machine and in LightBurn, it does have a homing sequence, and we will need to use that during this project. The other thing I have is the Air Assist Kit to burn cleanly and deeply through this cardboard. And the last item that I'm using is this honeycomb. It is magnetic and it does have a backer board sheet metal behind it, so any stray laser beams going through the project material and the honeycomb won't mark up my table. There's just a few steps to make this template that we can reuse and realign for future use. Join me as I go into LightBurn and design out this simple template. Going to select the circle command and select layer 9. That's just something that will show up much easier. Hold the shift key to make it stay a perfect 0. And for my medallions, I need a diameter of 3.2 inches. If you're following along at home on your own project, you might need a different diameter. Select the pen tool and draw a crosshairs vertically through the circle. This just gives me an idea of the sizing, and I'm holding down the shift so that, again, this line will just go in 45-degree increments. I'm going to pull this off to the side and select layer 10. I'm going to Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste that. I'm going to grab that, move it back where you can see it, and while that's still selected, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Grabbing somewhere around in the middle here, I'm going to move this around till I think it's somewhere in the center to make this crosshairs. And you'll see that my mouse pointer changes between a cursor to a smaller crosshair. That means that this is centered up. There, this looks like it's centered up. With the horizontal and vertical crosshairs selected, I go up to the top and do group select. That will form this as one group, and I'm going to drag this over back to the center again until my cursor turns into a crosshair. Now I know that the crosshair I just drew is perfectly aligned to the center of the circle. Now selecting everything, I'm going to go over to this icon here, create an array of the selected objects. This is the easiest way to duplicate and make a neat and orderly pattern for our template. The X columns, I'd like to make that 3 wide and 2 rows tall. And in between, I'd like the spacing to be 1/4 inch and the Y spacing to be 1/4 inch. Now it's going that spacing off of the very furthest point of each object. In this case, it's the very tips of the crosshairs that we drew. I like the way this looks. Let me zoom back. And holding the space bar, I'm going to pan around on the screen. I'm going to zoom in and select everything. And I'm going to just move this a little bit closer to the screen and to the center of the work area, excuse me. And next up, I'll zoom up by one of the corners here. Select the pen tool once again, and we're going to draw these smaller crosshairs. And the smaller crosshair, I'd like to make that a 1/2 inch long. And again, I'll Control C and to copy and Control V to paste that while it's still selected. Rotate 90 degrees. Grab the middle of this and move that up until it turns into a crosshairs. Again, I'll select both pieces and group those together. And with that selected, I can copy and paste that. And I'm going to grab this one. Typically, we put these alignment crosshairs in opposite corners. The further away these crosshairs are from one another, the better the alignment will turn out. For example, if I put this other crosshairs right here, any slight misalignment I have here, the further I move away from that, it will be amplified. So a small error over here will be a very large error over here. Now if I have the crosshair alignment all the way to the opposite end, any small error over here will be even less in the middle. And for the last step, I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to use a different layer for this one. And I'm going to draw something like that. And I'm going to hit the escape key twice to go back to my cursor. And with the box highlighted, I'm going to drag that around until I'm about in the center. And that looks good. And down here, I'm going to click the radius because for my templates, I don't want to have these sharp, pointy corners on it. I want to make it look nice with some rounded corners. I'll go down here and click on that tool, and I'm going to enter a 1-inch radius. I'm going to zoom in on the first corner because it can be hard to see. When I move my cursor, my mouse cursor, over that corner, you'll see it change to a crosshairs. That means that this radius tool will work. So when I click on that, there's our first corner. And I'll go around and hit each of these other corners. Takes a little bit of mouse control just to get your mouse pointer in just the right spot. If you find that you still have this white arrow mouse cursor, you're not in the correct spot. It does need to change over to this little mini crosshairs. That looks good. And just to review, my layer that is 09 is cutting out the circles. And then the next layer, I'm going to change that to line. That's making the crosshairs. And the last line, let me change that over, is actually cutting everything out. So the crosshairs on both the large circles and our alignment crosshairs are the same layer, and that's okay. And this all looks good. I'm going to type in some settings. I did some tests with this cardboard off camera to know what works best. For cutting lines, a speed of 10 millimeters per second at 100% power was very good. When I go over to engraving the material, a speed of 85 millimeters per second at a power level of 90 is perfect. And again, for this line on cutting out the entire template, we'll go back to 10 millimeters per second at a power level. And just making sure that the pass count is all at 1. Here the pass count is at 2. I don't need to make multiple passes. This 10-watt laser is powerful enough to cut through this cardboard in just one pass. With all of our template drawing made, it's time to turn on the laser machine. I've got under devices, Xtool is selected. I'm going to choose the COM port. And I'll click on the console tab and see that it is connected. It does identify it as an Xtool. With my material in the work area, I'm going to just put some of my magnetic strips around just to kind of captivate this cardboard to make sure that it does not shift around during the engraving process. Normally I don't have work that moves around on me, but when running Air Assist, if I do have a lighter type material, that can cause the work material to flutter around and then gives odd results, making it look like there's a machine tool problem when actually it was just the work floating around during the engraving process. And we'll see in the computer I have the start from option under current position. This is what I use when I manually push my laser machine to where I want it to start. I'm going to click the frame button and make sure that the laser travels over the entire workpiece. With the framing complete, I'm going to turn on the Air Assist. I have a box fan on and the door open to the shop. Normally I have an enclosure that's over here, but I do like to show the setup without any enclosures blocking the way. The other thing that I'm going to do is put on my safety goggles, and going through our pre-start list, I've set the focus, the work has been secured, and we did frame everything out, and the laser travels over the workpiece, and the laser module itself doesn't collide with any clamps or materials in the work area. This template took just a few minutes to design in LightBurn and about 5 minutes to cut out. Now, this little bit of time that we spent on this is going to save us so much time in the future when we can batch out 6 or 9 or however many that you make on your template. Now, the first thing I always like to do before I remove any workpiece off of the workbed is to go in with a small screwdriver or a pick and just kind of probe around and make sure that all of the cutouts that are supposed to be cut out are in fact loose. Knowing that all the pieces cut out cleanly, I'll remove all the pieces from the work area, mainly our work template. I'm going to hang on to these because I'm going to show these in an upcoming step. I'm going to actually engrave some pretend medallions on the back with our template aligned in the work area, but instead of trying to make it look like it's been put in there perfectly straight, we're actually going to throw this in at a slight angle and make sure that everything comes out correct so that what's drawn on our screen matches in the tool bed area. And for this, I'm going to tilt this so it's very obvious I did not put this in straight. And for this, I'm going to use the magnets. I'm going to just box these in. That's one of the great things about having a honeycomb that is magnetic, is I can keep reusing these magnets over and over again without having to peel tape each time to secure a project down. Jumping back into LightBurn, the first thing that I'll do is change the start from option from current position to absolute coordinates. This really neat alignment feature that we use, as far as I know, it only works in absolute coordinates. And the next step is to home. And we'll go, well, you've got a Xtool D1. It doesn't have homing switches, but there is a feature that Xtool added that in the industry that I worked in, we called it a hard stop homing. And what it does is it just actually takes the tooling, in our case here, the gantry and the laser head, and it just moves it until it hits a hard stop. With the laser homed, of course, in absolute coordinates, the secret tool that we want to use is located under Laser Tools and Print and Cut. It's this Print and Cut feature that we really want to use. I'm going to just start the wizard. It's the easiest way to go. I'm going to grab this top corner one first, and the first thing I need to do is I'll zoom in a little bit so that you can see it better. Again, my mouse cursor is going to move to a crosshairs. It's going to select this entity, this crosshair that we drew earlier, and when I tell it to set first target position, by selecting this, it's going to correlate those two things together. So I navigated over to the Move tab, and I'm going to change my move distance to a couple of inches here. And this does take a little bit of time and patience to manually move the laser over. You can't push your laser. If you push your laser by hand, it'll lose track of its position and you'll need to rehome your laser and start this process over again. So no hands on the laser. Keep making these measurements smaller and smaller. I'm going to go through this rather quickly just for the video process. The better this is aligned, the better your results will be. I'm going to nudge this over just one more, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to select Set First Target Position, and you'll see that it drew a red circle around, saying that it did in fact find that correctly. Now I'm going to select this bottom one here. Again, I'll zoom in for you, and my cursor turns into that crosshair again, and it selects that. And it's just a matter of jogging the laser head over to that area. I've got my crosshairs pretty well centered up over our target, and I'll select Set Second Target Position. You'll see that it drew another circle around that, saying it successfully found that. So we've got a red circle and a blue circle. There's one last step, align outputs, scaled. It has that highlighted defaulted. I haven't played with these too much in between. I always just do the default one. Let me know in the comments down below if you found a need to click on the no scaling option here. Once I click on this, I get a green circle around saying that this wizard has successfully completed. So to test this out, I'll navigate to Cuts and Layers. And I want to check out these circles. So that circle is on the first layer. So I'm going to turn off these other layers, and I'm going to adjust the speed to say 160 and maybe a power of 10. I just want to see that the laser beam is on. I don't need to actually cut. I'll hit start and we'll see how well this traces out over each of the circles. And that's cutting out pretty good. It's just kissing the edge more towards the left right there, and the rest looks pretty good. And given the amount of time I spent aligning everything, I think that's really good. And given, again, my medallions that I'm using, there's quite a bit of wiggle room when I place that in there. So the fact that my alignment is off 1 or 2 millimeters, more like 1 millimeter, that's perfectly fine for me. And for this next step, where I'm going to use the cutouts from before, and I'm going to put those, maybe one right here and one up in this corner here. I know you can't see it from the computer, but it's up in that corner. And maybe we'll do one down here. So we've got 1, 2 in a row and one in the opposite corner. And to use the template now, what I do is I turn off all the outputs for that. So anything new that I add into here, like a design, will be as a new layer. Okay, I've imported a file that I have. Here's the important part. I've got to drag that over to here. Again, the crosshair, my cursor, turned into a crosshairs identifying the center of the circle. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And I'm going to just drag this corner and make this a little bit larger. And I put this right in the middle. And when I brought that in, it brought in a new layer. I'm going to turn that layer on, and this layer, it's a line. I just want to draw it as a line so it cuts, and I'm going to use it as engraving, so it just does that very quickly. So we had that at a speed of 85 millimeters at a power of 100. Those are my settings with my laser with the type of cardboard that I'm using. And I just want to draw a line down here, so I click once and hold the shift, bring that line over, and then escape. And escape again to go back to my mouse cursor. And I'm going to just move that line down, and I'm going to put that on layer 27 so it matches this wolf head. Now the reason why I'm bringing that line in there is because I want to make sure that this line will end up being parallel to this line down here, because I do have the template in at kind of an angle. My next step is I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to group them together, and then again, copy and paste that one. I'm going to do that one more time. And certainly if I was filling in my entire template, I could go back and off of this first artwork image I have, I could go in here and do an array of that, and it can pop that in there automatically. But for this, I'm just going to do it this way because it's quick and easy. A lot of times before I hit start, I like to come up here to the preview and look at the total estimated time for the job, 45 seconds. That's the benefit of drawing out this design as a line rather than a full engraving. If I did this as a engraving, it would be like 5 to 8 minutes. As a line, it'll do it under a minute. Perfect. And without touching anything, I'm going to check the alignment here. And it does look like from the bottom of the template to this line that they are in fact parallel to one another. So that is pretty neat. With the template skewed pretty far in the workspace, we use that print and cut design to compensate for that. Wow, I'm really impressed with this print and cut feature in LightBurn. It really makes quick work of setting up templates to use for projects and future projects. I never realized that I could have this template turned that far in the workbed area and still have all of the shapes take that same tilt and come out perfect. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I'm really happy to share this information with you. If you like this video, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment down below. Doing any number of those things really helps this channel out, and it helps connect content like this with viewers like you. Until next time, have fun, be safe, and most of all, be creative.